Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, number 32. Alongside Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. How we doing, Level?
We're doing good. We're getting older just as the weeks go along.
We are. Pretty active week in Texas Tech sports. It's another spring football week in there. We'll talk a little bit of that. Of course, finally, as we kind of predicted, do have a head coach named and hired. Will be introduced on Monday of this week. Depending when you're listening, could already be introduced. So yeah, lot to dive into on those two fronts for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's just there's a lot going on. You're right. Obviously, baseball team over the weekend takes 2 of 3 from TCU, and there seems to be a lot of speaking of a lot of things going on. A lot of drama there lately. Yeah. Struggling pitching, struggling to play, get a lead and then play with it and all these things. And then, there's lots of chatter going on, like at least last in the 2 home series that you've had. So lots of warnings and ejections and all kinds of stuff there. So, but yeah, I guess it's nice to take 2 of 3 from TCU. And then obviously football continues, kind of still on the front half of spring. And I think, there's not any like major news coming out of, your camp as far as the football program, but just again, trying to get better. I think some of the recruits that you've had in last couple of weekends for people that are interested there have been pretty big time. Yeah, and then you have you finally have a basketball coach that early this week will be, have his first time behind a microphone and be able to speak to coming back to Texas Tech, I guess technically in Grant McCasland. So with that, I'll let you just spin the topic wheel and can just land it on wherever you want it to, I guess, and we'll just kind of go whatever direction you want to go. So.
Okay, well, let's start the topic wheel right there where you were with Grant McCasland and winning the NIT this past week for North Texas. Guy seems to have energy. We're seeing just videos, we're seeing little things, and if you've watched, I think a lot of Red Raider fans are probably like me, have not watched a ton of North Texas basketball until the last couple of weeks. And then you've taken in what you can in the NIT. And it is extremely apparent. His teams play hard and his teams play defense hard. So I think if that's where you're starting at, this is obviously a formula. You're trying to go back to what was successful in recent years for you and set defense as your baseline.
Yeah, I think I think it's really shows an ability to compartmentalize the fact that this team, this North Texas program, went on to win the NIT. It's a difficult tournament anyway, just because I think that motivation is different for different players and teams and coaches depending on what kind of season you had. It's a hard sell depending on what kind of season you've had, and you have a head coach here that was in the midst of a coaching search and job interviews, I think plural, throughout some of this postseason run, and to kind of keep that off to the side and not really let that infiltrate his program and staff and all those things, I think is a bit tricky. And then the fact that they went on to win this thing, I think gives him, a little momentum coming into this deal. But I do, Choice, I say that this often, programs in sports in general, when you don't have an identity, it usually in college programs are really what we talk about. High school, it's a bit tricky to do that, although we see that at the high school level with a system that you run or whatever. The players obviously change a bunch, and in the professional level, the players certainly change a bunch. And there's some examples to identity at the professional level, but in the college level, you get to decide what identity you want, and then you can recruit to that. High school, you have no really say so. Professional level, you really don't necessarily have a say so. That's why college, you pick the players for the most part. You bring in recruits or the portal to fit a scheme, a system, an identity, and that's why the recruiting aspect is so fascinating in college, and it kind of makes you or breaks you. But you get to decide what your identity is, and then bring the people in that you want to try to be an extension of that identity
Yeah.
or to employ that identity. And I do think that his culture, his identity is you're right, playing hard, and I think especially on the defensive end of the floor. And I think that will play well in this community, and it has played well in this community because the blue collar work ethic and all those things that we've seen over the last 6 to 7 years. So I think that's the part that I think that fans should maybe be most excited about with Coach McCasland's just brand or style of basketball, is that they already know what they want to do. And that's why it's a fair question to ask. Like Mark Adams as the head coach, what was the identity over the last 2 years? I had two examples to the contrary.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Ultimately, like if you'd have had a similar team this year, the way it was built and emphasis on one end of the floor, and than you did last year, I would absolutely have a feel for that. But it was the opposite of last year, and so
For sure.
So anyway, I think identity is a big deal when it comes to college athletics, and I think Grant knows who he is and what he wants to be, and that will be what his program's all about.
Yeah, no question. I think identity. That's the thing. This past year, you're searching. You have no idea what the identity is. One game, or I mean, possession to possession. You can have good defense or great defense one possession, and then you're giving up wide open layups or wide open threes the next one. And yeah, it was a bit of a conundrum this year. But I don't think there's a question at all what the identity is going to be based on with Coach McCasland based off of his time at North Texas. Here's our first question from the audience. Landon, wanting you to get the crystal ball out. How long do you think it will be before Texas Tech makes a deep run in March with Coach McCasland at the helm?
Yeah, I mean, as we're sitting here talking, I don't know who will be next to him coaching wise. I don't know who will be on his roster. I think look, this stuff happens quicker than it used to because everybody kind of has a new roster or a influx of new players, and you see some examples, Kansas State being a perfect one, to where you can really, your culture and identity can kind of take hold quickly, and you could have some massive success, but without knowing really what else is next to Coach McCasland, I really have no idea. I think he'll win? Yeah. Do I think that he'll be consistent with that? Yeah. But I don't know deep runs in March and everything like that without even knowing who's playing for him. And this could be a process choice that takes. I mean, this could be well into the summer. Technically, I mean, you're just not real sure how many current guys stay. What you're looking to bring in are you tied to anybody that you may bring in from North Texas or otherwise? Does anybody that you hire, are they tied to anybody that could come in and play for you? So without knowing that's a hard one to answer. I just know that he'll win. I'll say that he'll win much more than he loses.
Yeah, that's what he's done in the past. So I think that's
everywhere he's been.
Prediction.
Really. Yeah.
Fair prediction there. You mentioned coaches and assistant coaches. One question we've gotten a few times this week on our shows is, okay, the familiar faces. Any chance you see a Barrett Peary back, or a Al Pinkins come back from Ole Miss, or another name that's been rumored a little bit is Ben McCollum. Or are there any names that you think you would throw out there, Level, that could be possibilities?
I do think there'll be some guys coming from North Texas with Coach McCasland. I don't know what roles they will fill. I have a sneaking suspicion that that Coach Pinkins may stay in Oxford. I can't say that for sure. I think obviously his name has been front and center a lot, and for good reason. I think Coach Peary, same thing. I think he's known Grant McCasland for a long, long time. I just don't know. And then I think Coach McCollum at Northwest Missouri State, I think is where it is at the Division II level, has known Coach McCasland for a long, long time. I think very well respected coach. I've heard John Jacobs, who's on Scott Drew's staff. I've heard, you're just not real sure because this is Coach McCasland's. These are his decisions to make. This is his shot at the Power Five level, and he's got to surround himself with people that he trusts. And again, each decision could be an X's and O's decision. It could be a player decision. It could be a relationship decision. It could be a combination of those things. I mean, it's all putting a staff together is a bit of a puzzle because they all have different strengths, weaknesses, and hey, you're kind of largely in charge of this. You're in charge of that. Well, these 5 players, and you can get them to come here. So it would make sense for me to give you a call and have you as a coach. There's all different reasons why. But this is Coach McCasland's, first Power 5 job at the head level, and there may be people that he's had in mind. But I get the sense that there won't be really much that was here last year retained. I do get that sense, much at all. And that's the hard part for me is I've done this for so many years, and you watch these changes. Look, it's part of the business, but that part is never easy. It just isn't. And now the finality of, and again, that's Coach McCasland's decision to make. It's his call. He has the right to bring in his people. It's just a tough. The other side of it is tough, and I'm talking about people that weren't well paid, and in instances that either graduated from here or are just trying to get started in the business, and then they just look up and it's just you're out. So that part is very difficult. So, but that's what little I can tell you from a staff standpoint. So we'll just kind of have to see what Coach McCasland ultimately decides to do. I do think I will say this. I'll be shocked if Ben McCollum is not part of this. I will say that. Past that, I am not real sure, and I can't even tell you what role, because there's a variety of roles that you have. Some coaching, some non-coaching, and then the rule is going to change within the next year to where you actually have a 4th and a 5th position that can actually coach and can recruit for you. They can't just go on the road and go recruit. So it's like it's as close to an assistant coach as you're going to get without being a full-fledged assistant coach. And football is going to have the same thing. So there's some, we talk about the 3 assistants, but there's this 4th and this 5th position that will eventually be in place that will be key roles too. And again, every college will be able to be allowed to fill these roles. So anyway, just keep an eye on that. So
a couple basketball questions, personnel more related. Kelly asks, what Tech players do you think Coach McCasland will want to retain? Who do you think he will process out of the program? So one of those impossible questions again without knowing.
Yeah, I think there's some familiarity with somebody on Coach McCasland's staff and Robert Jennings. So I think he's probably got a good book there. Don't know what ultimately the plan is there. I think Elijah Fisher, they're going to stay in the portal and explore all options. I think that Coach McCasland indicated to Elijah's kind of family, look, we're going to have to watch some film on you. You're going to have to kind of get a feel for what this looks like. And then I just think, so I think Elijah Fisher is like, well, okay, if you don't already know, I'm going to go ahead and kind of look. So again, I hate to keep saying I don't know, but and Fisher is a guy personally, I don't know what to compare it to. Here's the problem. With what I saw from Elijah Fisher this year, I saw improvement. I think he would fit in with what Coach McCasland wants to do, because I think he really made plays on the defensive end. I think his minutes were very productive, and they weren't a ton of them, but when he was in there, and he's just a pup. I mean, I think he gets better as this thing goes along. But I don't know what to compare it to. Like, okay, yeah, we're going to let him go because we've got our eye on this guy, or we see what I'm saying? So I don't know what to compare it to, but guys that I thought would make sense to, and it's tricky because some of these guys are popular. If it's me building a basketball team and you're asking these guys to play heavy minutes, I think it's tricky if you have Harmon and Pop Isaacs both back. I don't know if that makes you as good of a basketball team because you're smaller there. Not to say they're both good. They both have major skill set. I just think it's tricky when you have both of them playing 25 to 30 minutes because you're smaller. Again, not trying to take a shot. I'm just kind of, I think if you have one guy out there like that, you can live with it, but it's tricky when you have multiple. And so and just to be fair, I think Davion probably pounded the ball into the court a bit too much for my taste. I think Pop Isaacs is, there's some turnover issues. I think though that his skill set is very good, but I think the people remember the 3-point shooting. And I just know the way Coach McCasland, from watching it, kind of the way they run offense, and I don't think that 30-footers early in the shot clock will necessarily fly with Coach McCasland. And so, we'll see. But I would definitely talk to these guys, though. I think they're both very talented. I think, Daniel Baccio would be one that I would hold on to for dear life, especially if you're into defense. Yeah, which I think Coach McCasland is. Jalen Tyson's an interesting one because I think that he's extremely skilled on the offensive end. I think he needs to be better on defense, but I mean, again, the skill set and the measurables and all those things. But
and Tyson just announced a new NIL deal publicly. Does that mean anything, or is it?
Great question. I don't know what money's tied to that. I don't know what that entails.
Yeah.
Grant McCasland, I don't think is involved at any level with any of that stuff, and so I don't know. And I would be like the Jennings and the Lamar Washingtons. I mean, I would be looking for reasons. I think I'll be honest with you, Demorion Williams and Kerwin Walton. I wouldn't. KJ Allen. Yeah. Look, all these kids are good kids, man. I didn't see any. I'm just talking like pieces of the puzzle that can play and help you try to win the Big 12 conference. That's what you're here to try to do. Is you're ninth place. And it needs to be better, and you missed out on the NCAA tournament, and so you've got to upgrade at some spots. So I just know this: you can't flush it. You can't just wipe the roster out. I think that won't work because you're limited with what you can do from a recruiting standpoint as well too. So we'll see.
All right, let's kind of running shorter on time. We can get more basketball questions as weeks go along with transfer portal and that sort of thing. But spring football has continued this past week and on into this week. Level. One question we had from Mark regarding spring football, or who are some of the early enrollees that you could see possibly making the 2 deep this fall, and who else has stood out during spring camp so far?
Well, I don't think this is your stats, your McCrae's, your Baskervilles, Linton. All these guys are going to be major contributors for you. Okay. Yeah. They are going to factor in heavily here. And in some cases start, I think all those things. I think from a redshirt standpoint or a true freshman standpoint, I think it's your, look, Mo Horn is a redshirt freshman. I think, Chapman Lewis, I think Brendan Jordan, I think Jordan Sanford. It was a sneaky departure, and I think it hurts you last year. I don't think you lost many guys that were, like, God dang.
Yeah.
Opportunities for some of these young DB types to really factor in right away. And I'll be honest with you, you really kind of need them to. Tim DeRuyter said it this week. It's like we've got a lot of old guys. We have a lot of young guys. we don't have a lot. There's not a lot of that are stellar, but the kinds of things right there to fill it up in the middle, it kind of goes from one extreme to the other, and you really need that freshman group to kind of step up, because corner is a bit of a worry, I think, for everybody over there, just because, everybody's going to talk about Malik Dunlap and Marquise Waters. Absolutely. What's behind them?
Yeah.
What's behind them?
Sure.
And I think that's a bit tricky right now. That's why these freshmen, that's why it's huge that these guys are here and going through it and trying to establish themselves. And as far as what was the last part? Like, who has stepped up in spring football?
Yeah, just basically who is looked the best right now in spring football.
I think if you hear comments from coaches, I think the offensive line has really been the most drastic improved position group. And I think defensive guys will tell you the same thing. But I think Joey would say that. I think Zach Kitley would say that. But I'll tell you, your two quarterbacks, and I do think there's a difference between the two, but I think your two quarterbacks have gotten that much better. I think that they both, Tyler Shuck is about 235 now. I think Baron Morton is at about 215, 217.
Yeah.
This last 3 or 4 months has been really big for them, but they are also operating the offense that much better, that much cleaner, that much faster. Now that this is kind of second spring in there, and it doesn't hurt when a guy like Bailey Zappi comes into town, that Zach Kitley.
That's cool.
When he's around, because imagine picking his brain. He's sitting there probably trying to beat out Mac Jones up there in New England for the starting job under Bill Belichick. But that shows you how much respect he's got for Zach Kitley. So I think it really points to the offensive line. So.
Yeah, offensive line is what we keep hearing, and I hope that's the case. I think a lot of Red Raider fans are hoping that is the case, that's your most improved unit, because it's been the one that's needed to be the most improved. So corners is where you have a little bit of a worry. Is there any part on the offensive side where you're like, I'm still a little nervous there based on personnel, or is it we feel pretty solid all the way through?
How about if I took it's, I don't think either Monroe or Caleb are like all conference type, but what's behind them? What happens? Yeah. What happens if one of these guys across the board goes down and you have to reshuffle it? Because guess what? Did we not see this at multiple things? And so I just don't know if you have a ton of answers at offensive tackle. But with what you have right now on that interior, it's solid, man. It's like Big 12, upper tier Big 12 good with those middle three. And I think Monroe and Caleb can be good players, and they are good players. I'm just saying I'm worried about like depth behind them. I don't know if there's not. Landon Peterson's not going through spring. So, and I still think you maybe lack just a bit of speed, but Dre McCray has opened that up quite a bit. But that would be my concern, is like I feel best about the offensive line, but there's still a minor concern there, I think, at the tackle position.
I think that's fair. Yeah, still gotta see it.
And Ty Buchanan would be your top tackle backup, and so you've got people there. I'm just saying they're not just a staff. You don't have just like answers in pen written all over the place with that deal, but it is much better than it was last year. There's no
doubts. Level, I guess we're kind of run out of time today, so we'll put a bow on it for today, and we'll talk some more basketball, some transfer stuff next week. We'll talk some more spring football as we roll along next week. And we'll call it quits today. Level,
okay,
appreciate you.
Sounds good, man.
Joining me.
Appreciate you. Keep hope alive, man. We'll talk to you, I don't know, around Easter or so, I guess.
Yeah, be sometime around then. That's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.